And so now I want to turn it to the audience to see if there's any questions to our panelists.
So he asked what kind of news feeds I use. I do use Twitter. I subscribe to the appropriate subreddits. Again, you know, Reddit is you got to separate the wheat from the tares. If you have a good news app, a lot of those have a good AI algorithm where, you know, it's the kind of thing where it's like, if you liked this, you'll probably like that. It's the same with YouTube. My wife is a secondary school teacher, and they use a tool called Veed.io that will transcribe YouTube videos. And so you can watch a video and think, hey, that's cool, and then sort of transcribe it. And then I take the transcribed text and plug paragraphs into ChatGPT and say, hey, make this grammatically correct so that it reads like normal English. And then you have, you know, the video and a transcript of the video. And I just sort of like, you know, I'm a cognitive miser. I don't want to think more than I have to. I'm sort of lazy that way. And AI tools are getting so good that my news aggregator is good about feeding me what it thinks I want. And my Twitter algorithm is good about saying, you should follow this person. And so I just sort of consume what I'm interested in. And then I make sure what I'm interested in is relevant to what I'm writing about. And what I'm writing about is what I'm teaching about. I do better. I don't know if this is advice for everybody. I do better when I don't have a divided self, to the extent that I can consolidate. You know, I used to dislike the idea of having a stack of books on my nightstand that I have to read and a stack of books on my nightstand that I want to read, and like merging those two stacks into one makes life easier for me, because I too have ADHD.
It's less reading.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions in the chat? Okay, we have a couple questions here in the back. Do you want to put the mic here and have them stand up and come through?
Yeah, maybe
And
that's
that
good.
you won't be on the camera, so.
Well, hi, my name is Sabrina. So I noticed that each of you guys mentioned that students seem to be more engaged when you use OER material. And then also I noticed in the video before the session started that one of the students had mentioned that he thought his professors were more engaged when they use OER material. So I was wondering if you guys thought that maybe it was related to your last response, which was that you're pulling from your own interests, and maybe the students are picking up on your passion and then they're responding to those interests, or, you know, or so on and so forth. So I'm just curious to know if any of you guys have some kind of theory for why students, you know, are more engaged, they pick up on it more, or as in your example, they are interested in the applications that they might use afterwards. So yeah, so like, do you guys think it's passion, or do you guys think that they appreciate that it's not the same textbook they've seen before, or yeah. Thank you.
You want me to take a crack at it?
Go, please.
So I think that moving away from a conventional textbook, already at that point, it's not an already tailored class, right? You're moving away from a class that is already tailored with a textbook, and like Richard mentioned, you got a stack of overhead slides or PowerPoint slides that they give you and a stack of notes, right? It does remove the instructor, makes it, alienates the process. Yeah. So I think that going into OER, you are trying to gather the material, you're trying to come up with your structure in the class to the way that you want to present the material. In certain disciplines, and also in a way that you feel the material, the concepts are delivered properly, and there's a deeper understanding of the material. So you're engaged, the students are engaged. It's actually at both ways, I think.
If I could follow up on that, I'm Marie Mooney. I'm a new instructor, assistant professor in biology, and I'm at the state where I have a textbook that we've been using for the genetics course I teach, and I'm thinking about moving it to OER. And I love using things. I really resonated with, like, the Atlantic articles are fantastic. You find a good one and that's better source material. And And so I love to bring in a lot of those resources to my class on top of this established textbook. And I'm following that. I feel like students are having a hard time following me. And so I'm wondering if you can give me some strategies on like helping them keep up with me when I'm engaging in OER stuff that's coming from anywhere.
Any thoughts?
I'm guessing you're already using Canvas and like all those OER material, you're grouping them somewhere that the students know this is where they need to go, maybe placing them ahead of time. So, and they know, so that I'm guessing you're already doing that. Yeah.
So, so I think students who are acclimated to textbooks are used to seeing the bold words and the red words and the call outs in the margins or whatever. So they've sort of learned to sort of attend to what is essential. And an article in the Atlantic doesn't give them that. And so I think you have to help students understand that we're, looking at the application of the application of concepts and not the memorization of concepts, and sort of get them thinking about, I'm asking you to read this because it shows how what we're learning in class can be, relevant to the real world. The other thing that I sometimes do that helps is, again, with a PDF editor, sometimes I'll write a comment and just have it point to a part in the text so that they have the sort of guide to reading, like, be careful, this part corresponds to this thing that we said in class, or pay attention to this. And so I annotate PDFs a lot. I find it's really helpful to annotate PDFs. But, it is, I agree, it is difficult to get students to sort of think about what's relevant. But in, my classes, I've always sort of asked myself, what is it that I want students to learn? Like, what is it that I want them to take from this, or remember 5-10 years from now, particularly students that aren't going to take another sociology class. And I think it's still better to use, those long form journalism pieces, because if you, they have a lot of impact.
And prepping students as well, and knowing what you're going to be giving them. And that only occurs as you teach the course more and more time. The first time you go, you're providing new content. The next time you're teaching it, you're prepping them that there will be content that you will be pulling from outside sources. Some things that we do, I teach health policy, and I teach it in the summer, and the session ends in May, and I teach it in June. So all of these new things just happen, and we don't know what Florida is going to do next with healthcare policy. We don't know if we're going to have healthcare. Every time I get on a plane in the summer, a new policy drops, and now I have to update my students. But in the beginning, if you prep them that this is going to be the format of how you are teaching it, rather than just springing new things on, they are more adept to follow along with it, taking time to explain why it links and how it links. And Canvas is a good resource to have the purpose of why you're reading this. This is how you're linking. This is what you're doing it, and you should be looking kind of annotated, but I do it more of a summary point and highlight key things that I want them to focus on. And that allows them that the course progress. And the more that I do it, the less guidance I have to give and how they interact with this new type of information.
And I guess I'd like to add that it is challenging. Yeah.
It's
If you
very
find it challenging, that's not unusual. This is normal, because if you want to take the easy route, yeah, that's, here's a textbook, here's the class, and the students are happy. Yeah. Meaning, okay, they think, oh, it's when you're trying to, the fact that you're actually trying to bring in OER material, gather resources, it is a better course. It's just you're putting that much effort into it. It is challenging. It is challenging to kind of the organization, the giving the students that information, making sure everyone's getting it, getting them all lined up. It is challenging. And so you need some repetition sometimes throughout the semester. etc., but have a good, well-defined structure. And
I think one last thing, just, I think you have to kind of think like a student, because when a student reads that, they're saying to themselves, how is this going to show up on a test? And it's not obvious how it's going to show up on a test. And so I think helping students understand how you're going to assess what they learn from an article like that will really alleviate some of their anxiety about reading it.
Aaron.
My example, I give you example about my course. That subject is hard to find OER, but I don't know if my example can help you. Okay, I believe genetic, that course you are teaching, is it like a gateway course in your field? Upper level.
Rate no matter who teaches it. So we're trying to find better ways to engage with the students, and
Okay.
we haven't found something that really works yet.
I'm teaching like introduction to structure and structure system. So this course requires students have a very good math background and physics. So one of the concept I teach them is like the beam and supported by roller support and pin support. This theoretical concept, and I also show them how, solve the problems, etc. But after they studied this topic, this concept, they don't know how to apply it to the real world, right? So sometimes it's, why should I study this one? It's not easy to study. So like Richard said, like you need to start to connect these OER resource gradually. So one day I'm lucky, I find in the YouTube Discovery channel, I guess, it introduced a very high-rise building in Los Angeles. And that video basically show the audiences how the basement is several stories, several floor high. Like in the basement, they apply the pin support and roller support design foundation to absorb the waves. Earthquake is a big concern in Los Angeles, the high-rise buildings, and basically the earthquake give like a horizontal and vertical wave shake on the buildings. So they use the pin support and the roller support to absorb these waves from this earthquake. So make this building to safe to stay even during the earthquake, very severe earthquake. So that video is very impressive. And after I watch this 10 minutes video, I think this is exactly what I want. So I just, right after that concept and methodology, calculation method, I show students this video. Students say, that's why I should study this concept and solve the problem.
It takes time. It will happen over the more and the more you teach the course, the more and more resources you'll pull in. But it does take time for the students to know and follow you. You have to take them with you on that journey of whatever strategy you want to use. Did we have another question here?
So I'll just give a follow-up comment. I agree with all your comments on the engagement of the OER. What I found with the College of Health, I teach in the College of Health, the Champeriani and the Health Administration with Hannah, and all our students and our topics are all engaged, and there's a graduate level in healthcare already. So the textbooks are already out of date. If you look at a 2-year, even a 2-year ago, that was written probably a year before that, and they don't even cover what happens in healthcare over COVID. I mean, healthcare has completely changed. And I mean, the whole world's changed over COVID. But talk about healthcare has completely changed over COVID. So many of the principles that are covered in the textbook don't even apply. So our graduate students, when they have the OER and the recent articles and what's going on, they know that's what's happening in the real world. It's not old world anymore. It's real contemporary. So that's why I think our students find OER much more engaging, at least my classes that I've converted to OER. So that's my experience. But what I wanted to ask y'all was, have you had any experience with face-to-face classes taught with textbook converting to OER versus online courses converting to OER that have used conventional textbooks? Have you noticed any difference in the conversion, the ease of conversion? Maybe any experience with that?
I think in either case, it's challenging. You have a slightly different set of challenges. The online classes are challenging for their own reason. It's not ideal
For your content.
for your content, right? For OER content. And it's not ideal for teaching, right? The students are in the environment, they might be distracted. It's not the same thing. Yeah, at least from my field, that's how it's just having the students in front of you, at least at some point in time together, focus on something, or quote unquote focused on something.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very beneficial. But like switching over to OER is again those challenges involved with making sure the students understand that this is you're expecting these are expectations that they whatever, if it's reading them, kind of summarizing them, whatever that you want to do, those tasks and the clear expectations, communicating that is a challenge, and that's really I think at the heart of. But yeah, you stick with, I mean, it's worth sticking with it.
I'm probably not the right person to answer your question, because all of the courses I'm teaching right now is I based on my survey, a student give me feedback. They prefer to have a hybrid modality. So, but another one basically the tips I can give you is you can encourage a student to find some good resources, and you can use it for the class.
Richard, how is your class format? Is it face-to-face?
I usually teach face-to-face courses. Yeah.
Our programs in health administration, our undergraduate is 100% online. Our executive master's, Dr. Periani is the director for, is 100% online. And we have a master's in the middle that is a face-to-face, and students do really echo that they prefer, especially graduate level, really do like the hybrid model. They want some interaction, which helps reemphasize of, especially in my course, as I introduce health policy content that's just coming off of the legislative session. It helps me set this up in a classroom setting. I actually have my class on health information technology. Anything 6 months is too old. And so the classroom allows me to come in and, chat about ChatGPT, and students pull it up and go, what is Medicare? How do you solve the healthcare problem in the US? And then GPT kind of like freezes on them. I'm like, that's a good solution right there. And so watching students interact, in a session, I don't use PowerPoint slides. I threaten them with PowerPoint slides. And if they don't discuss and engage, we will pull it, and I will use my monotone voice and see how far they can interact. And it does help students to have that interaction with us faculty a little bit better. But in 100% online, OER material seems to be a lot more easier for students, especially I think it's more program specific, just because we do deal with a lot of students that might have socioeconomic issues accessing materials that are more purchasing for books. We're able to send healthcare. There's a lot of content about healthcare, is just sifting through what's the right content of healthcare and giving them resources. For my undergraduate, I still use a book. It is purchased by the library, and there's unlimited copies of it as a foundation. It might be 5, 6 years old. That's okay, because Medicare and Medicaid is the same and it updates, but the foundation is there. And the resources that I use for OER is to supplement the updated content. So they have the good foundation for those who like a book. They still have that textile PDF thing, and then additional YouTube videos or podcasts, articles, journal articles. And now it does change the way that you search the web. Every time I'm like on TikTok, ooh, that's great for my class. And so like, it just changes the way that now you engage as a teacher and a faculty with online content, because you're constantly thinking, how can I hoard all these resources for my students? And I would spend hours just watching things down a rabbit hole about, some strange things that I wouldn't have done otherwise, just because I think it might be useful for students. And so just constantly, once you start OER, you don't ever stop.
Following on the heels, the difference between online versus face-to-face, we have a question from one of our online participants that Laura's going to read for us.
Yeah, so the question from Kevin Hewlin says, are there any concerns about the lack of a centralized authority or quality control process can make it difficult to assess the accuracy and reliability of the materials?
It's a good question. Any thoughts?
It's very subject specific, yeah. So it's a hard, it's a very good question, but I wish there was a centralized authority that could not just the online, even the face-to-face, just alone, right? From one semester to another semester, from one faculty teaching it to another faculty teaching it. There's a big variation in how it's presented. And
Well, as faculty, we can basically control based on our knowledge, expertise. Before we post these OER materials, we need to study first, like the videos you watch hours and hours.
A lot of them you watch.
Yeah, you have to be careful, like which one you're gonna pick.
Yeah, I agree. You're the centralized authority. And, I think it's important to fact check things. It's important to think about things before you post them, but I generally don't stray too far from things that I know about when I start posting stuff online like that.
And now you have your own voice versus a publisher's
Yeah.
voice on the content. Especially, I reference the health policy because it is very political, and I can have a liberal stance, a conservative stance. But since I do my own content for OER, I show students both extremes, the crazy extremes of healthcare, somewhere in the middle, somewhere half between liberal and conservative, where the publisher tend to only focus on more of a liberal, open mind kind of perspective, and students feel perhaps, let's see what other America think, and now they're able to see it. So again, you are vetting it yourself, but it gives you more of a voice of what the field is versus the publisher's idea of what the field is. Any other thoughts?
Do you think that the tone of writing an OER is what really does engage the student, because it's more personable and less academic, and therefore it's more understandable for the student, or at least approachable for the student to use OER?
Richard, I see you.
Yeah, I think,
Shaking your head. there,
I
Rick.
don't want to insult anybody, but academics are not known for their clear, concise prose. Yeah.
What?
And I give them 2 articles. One's a web resource that's .gov, completely real. One is an NPR article, completely real. I then ask them to evaluate the resource and tell me which one's fake and which one's real, or what's going on. I've never encountered a class where everyone says the right answer.
Mm.
And it's really impeccable because NPR is pretty well known in this country, correct? And yet none of them think to Google what it even means, but they Google everything. So I oftentimes find that my students think I'm trying to trip them up. You know what I mean? And I do think that the academics, the expository writing can be dry at times, right? But I had a student this semester literally tell me, can't you just give me a textbook, give me a syllabus that's in print and hand it? And I was like, it's a deal course. So, sorry, I didn't mean.
Yeah, that's right.
I agree is basically what I'm saying.
Learn in high school.
Yeah.
On the topic of textbook, I think with the multimedia, so you are able to create content that have interactive elements to it. And so rather than being a dry textbook, that's just text, there could be interactive elements depending on there could be links, etc. Right? So and actually Pressbooks, which is what CERT has partnered with, allows you to create such interactive kind of text. And so if you're interested in authoring, maybe that's something to look into.
You can
Good,
start
good
from
plug for a workshop later this week,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You can start from collecting and collating your own content of what it looks like in your class to kind of developing your own content, or all the way at the beginning infancy of OER, which is you have a book and you're supplementing that book by OER content. It doesn't need to look one way for every faculty, and it looks so different even within one faculty across their multiple courses. Just finding the right thing of what the course is saying to you, what the students are saying to you. You know, my students think that I don't teach because I don't have PowerPoint slides, and I get that a lot in my ISQs. She doesn't teach because she doesn't have PowerPoint slides, and because they've always taught that PowerPoint slide is the way you learn, but no one ever reads it. They're just there to follow along. But engaging them and allowing them to think is something completely different. And just, you know, I'm like, I don't really care about the low ISQs. Doesn't really impact me, because I do think this strategy is better. Even though you might not agree with it and you're comfortable in your safety blanket of a PowerPoint, it's not necessarily the right way to moving you forward. Because when you're in a hospital talking to someone, you're not going, hold on, let me pull up my PowerPoint slides while I tell you about the new scheme of our insurance payment models. And so this is really why I engage in. So as students learn, as the more I develop more of my better instructions for students of why we're doing this, we see more engagement with students being open to these type of OER resources as well. You'll always have that one student who goes, just give me a textbook.
That would be hilarious.
Right? I do make on my own videos as well for my students in the classes, and I talk to them about, like, you know, when we discuss things are sensitive topics. Like last semester, it was all about abortion for Alabama, and we discussed it from the liberal side of view to the conservative side of view, and finding resources, pulling them up to find articles, and they were more engaging to find the information versus actually having a stance on the topic. And that's how you engage them in a way that's not political, but still very informative. It's just finding the right tone on how to bring it to life. And it's a very sensitive topic, and it could go either way with our current political climate, but the information is real, policy is real, how it's driven, and we need to discuss it if you're going to be engaging in healthcare.